Thank you so much, Mr. President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, and my colleague, and also my excellent President of the Government of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, and my colleague, and also the President of the Federal Republic of Brazil, Ignacio Lula da Silva, and also a colleague. We are surrounded by colleagues. And also His Highness of the European Union for Foreign and Political Affairs, Ms. Kaja Kallas, and His Excellency the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Uruguay, Mr. Mario Luetkin, and His Highness the Subsecretariat of Foreign Affairs and the National Coordinator in representation of the Republic of Honduras, Mr. Hernando Torres Zelaya, His Highness the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of Jamaica, and also Ms. Kamina Johnson-Smith, and also His Highness Presidents and Prime Ministers and Chiefs of States and government of all the attendees, and also the VP of the Colombian, Francilina Marquez, and then also all the ambassadors and all the representatives of international organizations that have been accredited before the government, and also all the ministers and all the officers of the national government, and also the authorities of the Department of Magdalena Mass Media, and also the civil authorities of the civil and indigenous authorities, because here we're talking from government in this same territory, and also the Kogi, Arzario, Arhuaco, Cancuamo peoples from the Sierra Nevada of Santa Marta, and all the mass media, my daughter Antonella Metro that it's around, and also everybody who's here with us in this ceremony for the opening ceremony of the 4th Latin American Caribbean European CELAC Summit. And okay, I cannot talk on behalf of the group of CELAC, because CELAC has some statutes that make that everything is done through consensus. And I think that the statutes need to be changed, but this is something that CELAC has to do, because it eliminates its operations, its capabilities, because we'll never have an anonymous opinion between the governments in the world, and any government in the world in the CELAC can say no, and so things are not done. And to be able to achieve a relative consensus becomes something that it's critical for an organization like CELAC. And that's why CELAC and in the assemblies, but this is something that makes me to talk here as the president of Colombia, and I also give my opinions. On these opinions, I was in the past summit in Brussels. This is the 4th summit. I think that we need to make an assessment, because the world has changed. It will always change, and because life, it's a constant fluid. That's what the indigenous peoples says, and as well as Heraclitus, Hegel, and many others. And in this flow, today we have to make a very specific analysis of the situation where we're at. Of course, there are some common topics, common action topics that Europe and Latin America and the Caribbean can do, and they can develop. We are in a very challenging context, and we all know about this. Each government has its positions, and I believe that most of the governments know, and we have acted in how to reduce the barbaric events that want to flood the world. There is a political contradiction between the democratic project that was developed in Europe, in North America, and also in Latin America, and maybe all the countries in their history, maybe all the countries have tried the idea of democracy in their own ideas, in their own processes, in their own languages, but in the recent and contemporary history, we do know that it was in Europe, it was in Latin, it was in North America, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and especially in the Caribbean, when we started to develop some written theses in French that were brought in a clandestine manner in the different vessels, but that became real, not in amongst those that were the governors. And back then, but also in the peoples that were not Western peoples and that were being dominated in the Caribbean islands. And we can see that the black peoples that were brought by force from Africa under a very terrible episode, slavery that has had a very this is a very horrible effect, and it's because of slavery, it's something that has been something terrible because we're trying to treat people as slaves on benefit of others and as objects, and this created a difference. Created a sort of subconscious element in politics, and there's a brand, that because of skin differences that gave way to racism, that gave ideas to a different kind of race, and that gave to another barbaric events, the Nazis, what happened with them, etc. That's why democracy became real and became like a weapon. It became people. It became a horse, because back then that's why it happened. They galloped with the banner of freedom. In this same municipality, we created the first palenque in Santa Marta. And the close in Cartagena, and Bencobiojo built the first free state in the whole American territory. And once we thought of the word freedom or liberty, we created another essential topic that it's associated to this, which is the concept of democracy. We talk a lot about republic, but we don't talk about democracy, because maybe democracy, it's an unfinished project. Nobody has the definite solution to how the power of the people becomes real, because democracy doesn't mean more than the power of the people. And in one way or the other, this power of the people, that it's replaced by all kind of intermediaries that keep the power, and then dictatorship, the tyranny, the despotism, because here in Latin America, it's something that we've also endured. It was the indigenous and the black people that created a battle for independence and for liberty in the process. It started, of course, on a complete process. And we can see that that Bolivar, there is a liberator Bolivar. We can say that the liberator that was an incomplete figure, because he died with a slave by his side. Apparently, they didn't give him just water. He died in an hacienda nearby, and he is commemorated with a fascist statue, because there was a liberal architect that did the monument, and they built it as they built the Mussolini statues back in Italy, and he left us this architectonic horror that we can't remove. But this is where Bolivar died in an incomplete manner, and he left us a message for unity in the Americas. This is something that we would like to discuss in this joint statement in one of its points. He wanted a Latin American political unit. That's what he wanted. That was very difficult back then, because everything was new. Everything was recently born. How to build a parliament, how to build a party, how to build the word democracy when there was a slavery, and that was the same concept that was being considered in the United States. How to build freedom if there were slaves, and he took the United States to a very cruel civil war, and so did we in this lands. We can see that the literature from 100 years of solitude shows the loneliness of Colombia in its permanent struggle against something that it doesn't know what it is, but what they wanted to be able to have a democracy and freedom. This incomplete Bolivar wanted to join, and they created the Amphicyonic conference that is going to be held in Panama. But I would like to say that Panama back then was the New Grenade. It was part of the New Grenade, the New Spanish Grenade. And the new Spanish Grenade became independent towards all the combats. There was a war, and it was also, and since 1816, it was part of the Republic of the Great Colombia. and from the great Colombia that blended Venezuela, Colombia, and Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, and even Haiti came. Nowadays we have conflict between Haiti and Dominican Republic, but this banner with its blue and red color, it's the same color of Haiti that it's here from Haiti. We have the idea of freedom, and it came from the black people that wanted to become free from the French that had also fight it in their own country under the idea of liberté, fraternité, égalité. To have this amphithyonic conference as an idea of regional integration in the ism, which what blended the North and the South, and there was a discussion whether the United States should be a part of it or not. I mean, it's history, I know, but I think that it's important to think about this declaration. The European Union has had an even more recent integration, but more successful integration process. Our process, it's a bit more old. It starts from this amphictyonic conference, but it's much more literally. And there are centrifuge forces that move us away. The economy of the world creates some challenges for each country that I believe it's something that we should do, that we should manage in a unified manner. But sometimes we separate from those challenges. Finally, there are two integration processes, one here, one in Latin America and the Caribbean, that I think that we need to delve on. And there's one more developed with a lot of discussions in the different countries in Europe, and both are guided by the thesis of freedom and democracy. The question is no longer how it was in the past, but how is the thing today, and what